Hello everyone, you're watching Kid Buzz and this is Gupshup Season 2. Today, here with us, we have GM Harshvardhan, an artificial intelligence researcher who is also a KIT alumnus. He is a machine learning engineer with a specialization in deep learning. He has also achieved various state and national level prizes for his exemplary essay writing and literary skills. Hi Harshvardhan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, yeah, thanks for the intro, by the way. Thanks for having me here. First of all, thanks for the opportunity. I was looking forward to this interview, and I hope with this interaction we can help out a few people who are looking to take the GRE test and maybe go for a master's abroad. So yeah, let's go.
So, without further ado, let's start with the session. So, firstly, we are super excited to know how it all started for you. Who was your inspiration and who was your biggest support in the entire process?
Right. So I think it started in towards the end of the second year, where I started doing some research in machine learning, but I was only doing it for to get a good placement or something. Later on, I realized. I mean, in the third year, I realized that what I'm doing is actually like beneficial more towards getting a master's abroad rather than a placement. So I thought, okay, maybe I should switch over to this thing now because I saw that uh, I was liking what I was doing, right? So I realized that maybe if I go with this direction, I could do the same thing even as a job, maybe in an R&D position somewhere. So that's how it started, I guess. And as for inspiration, see, they're not it's not really a rare thing for someone to go for a master. So there's no role model for me as such. I guess what inspired me the most was thinking about myself maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, and thinking about sitting in a classroom of full of master students and tackling advanced topics in the same thing that I research about. So that was quite exciting for me, in a totally different environment, by the way. So I think that was the inspiration. And as for support, I had a few friends who were also taking the GRE, and they supported me a lot. But I think the biggest support I received was from my parents, because after COVID, it was, I think, the second year when COVID hit, and then we all came back home. And then I think when I told my parents that I was not going to sit for placements and I was going to take the GRE test and go for a master's abroad, they didn't ask a single question. I mean, they were the biggest support that I had in this period because I was at home all the time. So yeah, I think my parents were the biggest support.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So yeah, you can go ahead.
yeah, so what was college life like for you? Like, what activities did you indulge in during your college days? And how did you create a balance between your personal and educational life?
Um, Mostly, I was indulged with the dance society, the ensemble group. I still am a part of it, and it was like a coin. It had two faces. The first would be going to college, being a normal student, just going through all the periods of the classes and stuff like that. And then after that, I would come back to hostel. Usually, for people, it's like when you go back to your hostel after college, you form groups and you uh, talk to your friends, and while you walk towards the hostel or while towards some food stall or something, towards the kid road or anything like that. But for me, it was not like that. It was totally different. Our classes, I would just rush back to my hostel and maybe take rest for an hour or so, and after that, I would rush to one of the two places. It would be Juice Point or KSAC, right? I'm not sure if you're familiar with those places, but my crew would be there because we had events around the year. So maybe in a month or two, there would be an event coming up, and we had to rehearse for that. So I would be with my crew doing that, setting up performances, practicing, or maybe even looking at solo category. So for the solo category, I would be performing in some songs. So I would have to dedicate some time for that as well. And after that, I would just come back to hostel, and the day would, I mean, it would repeat itself in the next day.
That's really cool.
It's really
Over
helpful
to
as
you,
well. I
Parth.
mean,
You guys in
Yeah.
Australia, you would know.
Oh yeah, we're about to actually go to offline, so we're
Oh
hoping to
yeah.
see.
It would be fun. It would be great fun. I mean, you would never get bored. You would want to get bored because it would be so busy.
I totally get that. And these days, it's just everything's boring. But then there's excitement. There's
Yeah,
about
yeah,
to go to college, so
yeah.
there's that.
Hmm.
So coming on to more of the exam-related questions, why exactly did you decide to go for the GRE, and what were the resources and schedules that you followed to make sure that
Uh,
you were actually
yeah,
successful?
yeah. So see, I didn't have a choice. Unlike today, where you have an idea of whether the university is going to waive the GRE requirement or not, I had no choice like that because it was really like COVID was still new, and we didn't really know whether the GRE was going to be waived or not. I mean, the GRE being waived was not an idea at all, right? We thought, okay, we have to take it. It isn't a requirement, right? Like JE or GATE, something like that. So GRE was a requirement. So that's why, I mean, obviously I had to take the GRE. That's why I went for it. And about the resources, first I'll tell you the list of the resources. Then I'll tell you how I use them, because you might have a lot of resources, but you have to use them properly. Uh, that's what matters, right? And then I'll tell you my schedule, like what schedule I followed for the GRE score. Um, so I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but I scored 330 out of 340 on the GRE, with 5.5 out of 6 on the analytical writing section, right? So, and the individual score was 163 in verbal, which was tough, which was the toughest section, and 167 out of 170, by the way, 167 on the quant. Okay. So the resources. First of all, I started my preparation with I don't know, watching some YouTube videos because I had no idea what the GRE was like. And after YouTube, I arranged some mock tests from Princeton Review, from Manhattan, from Kaplan, and also some mocks that you get from the model test papers behind in the last pages of books, right? And then for verbal, I used the Barron's 50 word list book. I don't know what the name of the book is, but it's Barron's GRE Prep, which is right here. So this book was for the verbal section. And then I followed a PDF for Manhattan 5 pound book for the quant section, and a few other books that I used, but those are up to you. These two are the main books that I used, and then the other books are just, they can be changed. I mean, they can be replaced by any other book, so it depends on the applicant. I mean, depends on the test taker. Um, so yeah, how I use them was, so first I'll start off with verbal. So there are like 50 word lists in this book, and each word list has about 50 to 60 words. I think it's 60 words. So in total you have 3000 words. So I thought, okay, I had to go through all the 3000 words. um, and what I did was I maintained a diary. So I mean, this got full, and then there's another diary here. So these are full of words, right? What I did was I wrote down every word, the meaning of that word, and a sentence associated. I mean, sentence for the word of how to use it. So I did that for verbal, and it pretty much covered 90% of the vocabulary that you use in GRE. And how I did it was, I like in the morning. I'm going into the schedule right now. Okay, I'll come back to this later. And this was how I did verbal. Okay, although memorizing all the words is not enough, you have, I mean, the verbal section, the questions, you never know what you're gonna get, right? So only not only the words, but you have to understand the context and the tone behind the question. So that is very important, and you need practice for that. So that with this, it covered my verbal syllabus. I mean, the preparation for it. As for quant, there were like 27 chapters in the book. Each chapter was in the Manhattan 5 pound book. Each chapter covered one topic, and altogether they covered the whole syllabus of the GRE quant. So what I would do is, I tried to cover. I mean, I tried to solve all the questions in the book, and it was very good. I mean, after solving all the questions, I thought I was good. I mean, good with quant, but see, there were limited number of questions for each chapter. You'd have 30 to 40 questions or 50 questions, and I needed more. So I would just scour for questions from somewhere, whatever questions I can get for GRE from websites and from other books, and that's how I did my quant. And for the analytical writing, I don't know how I prepared. Really, I mean, see, this section is like, I prepared the least for it, and I got the most in it. I mean, I got 98 percentile in this section, right? and I didn't even like prepare properly for it, because I think I liked writing since school time. So I always wanted to write something, or express my thoughts using by writing an article or an essay or something like that. So there were like two essays in the analytical writing section. One would be to just analyze what they're giving you. They would give you a passage and you have to analyze it. You have to ask questions about it. You have to ask what proof is required to validate their claims or something like that. That is the analytical part. And the second essay, for which you get another 30 minutes, that would be about, they would just give you one sentence, maybe a quote or a notion or an idea, and they would ask you to comment, or they would ask you to take a stand, say you agree or disagree with it. And you have to write a 600 or 700 word, ideally 600 700 word essay for that in 30 minutes. So I really like doing that. I like typing a lot, so I would just type the essays, and I only did it in the mock test. So whenever I would take a mock test, I just practice the analytic writing only then, never in an off test environment. Um, and yeah, the finally the mock tests, how I used them was, I used to take a mock every, initially it was once a month. Okay, it was in the 4 month period. I took it once in the first month, then twice in the second month, maybe 4 or 5 times in the third month, and maybe 7 times in the last month, or something like that. I just increased the frequency of taking the mocks, and I think that's the best way to use your mocks if you have so many of them. Yeah, finally coming to my schedule, I woke up in the morning. I tried to follow it. Strictly. At least in the last 2 months of my preparation, I really tried to follow this schedule. I would wake up at 6 or 7 a.m. And I would write down one word list of 60 words, and after writing that down, I would review the two word lists that I did before. So if I'm doing 36 today, I would review 34 and 35, right? And on in towards the end, I would review maybe 10 word lists at a time or something like that. And that's how I did my verbal, pretty much. I had to do some questions for verbal from, maybe I did some questions from the Barron book as well, but I also followed Manhattan's verbal questions. So I guess that's how I did. And probably in the mock test, there were a good variety of questions that I had to come back to, because I would go wrong in many verbal questions. So I had to come back and understand the tone and context of the question. So I think that helped a lot. And as for quant, it's, see, you get 1.75 minute per question, right? For 20 questions in a section of a quant. So I thought, okay, when I'm going to practice for this, I would dedicate 1.5 minute per question, only 1.5, no 1.75. So that prepared me to have a speed that would, if there's a hiccup, if there's a question that I'm not able to solve, I would just leave it and come back to it, and I would come back with 10 minutes on my clock. So 10 minutes would be easy to, yeah, ample to solve that question. So that's how I did. I deliberately reduced the time for me to solve a question in quant section, and I would do 20 questions in a session. So I would give myself 30 minutes to solve those 20 questions, even though I would get 35 in the real test, right? And that's what I did in the evening. The morning was all verbal, and then I would take some rest after lunch, and then I would get back to it in the evening. Do some quant, solve a few questions, and solve one chapter a day. So 27 took maybe a month to finish the Manhattan book, and then I would just solve miscellaneous questions from anywhere I could get. So I think that's pretty much covered, right? Yeah. Also, one more thing I would like to mention. See, this is not there anywhere else. I could not find this information anywhere else. I understood it only by experience. It's that there are three main companies to take mock tests, right? It's Manhattan, it's Princeton Review, and Kaplan. Okay, so they are slightly different from the real test. Each of them is different in its own way. If you take Manhattan, focus more on your quant score, because Manhattan's quant is really difficult. It tries to mimic the real test, so focus more on the quant score, and its verbal might not be. It is also difficult, but the words that are used in Manhattan mocks, they're not so mainly used in the real tests. They're really, I don't know, it's arcane words. I would say they're never used in any of the real tests anymore. So so that is what you have to focus in Manhattan. If you take the Princeton test, your verbal score is going to matter a lot, because their verbal sections are really like the real test. Okay, So verbal is better for Princeton. And as for Kaplan, both the sections, the verbal and the quant, they're pretty much on a medium scale. I mean, neither of them are as good as Manhattan's quant or Princeton's verbal. But I did notice that in Kaplan's quant sections, if you did very well, I mean, it's computer aided. So if you're doing well, you'll get the harder questions. So if you did really well, the harder questions of Kaplan were so difficult. I mean, I thought if this is the real GRE, then I don't know what I'm going to do. So sometimes the Kaplan would throw me some questions in quants, which were really difficult. So I don't think that's a good thing. It might be difficult, but you won't really see those types of questions on the real test. So yeah, I think that's a big answer for the resources and schedule question. So that's how I did it.
No, no, that's. I mean, it's all about information, and the more we have, the better. And you talked about the quant, and you talked about the verbal sections as well. Which was the most difficult section of the exam for you? Tell us about some difficulties you faced in preparing for that particular section.
Yeah, I think I touched upon this before a little. It was the verbal section. I mean,
Mm.
I scored 163, which is 92. It's 92 percentile, which is fine for me, but it was the most difficult section because I could never be sure of the types of questions that I'm going to face. What are the topics I'm going to see? Uh, by the topics, I mean there are three types of questions: the sentence equivalence, the text completion, and the third is reading comprehension. The reading comprehension by far was the most difficult thing because even a 2 or 3 second lapse in concentration, you'll miss reading a two lines or maybe 1 or 2 lines, and you have to read that line again, and you don't have that kind of time. So you have to be at the peak level of your concentration while you're reading a passage, and you have like maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs in one question. Also, the answer choices for our RC question would be like, the answer choice is one answer choice is 3 lines long, and then you have 3 into 4, those many lines. You have to read the answer choices all together, and then you have to understand them and the complex English that is being used in the answer choices itself. So that was a little difficult, but I thought maybe I should practice it, right? But really, I read about 100 passages throughout my preparation. I could have done more, but I stopped midway because I could not see any increase in my accuracy of the RCs. I think it was not practice, but it was more practicing the level of concentration that you should have. I saw that in the starting of my preparation, I was doing just as good as I was doing in the last, right? So I thought it was more to do with chance, rather than any kind of preparation. But then I thought that, I mean, that's ridiculous, totally ridiculous. That cannot happen. So I think I have to assume here. I think it was the concentration level, and to try to assume that what you're reading, with the passage that you're reading, it's simple. I mean, it's really simple, and it's really interesting. You have to convince yourself of that so that you can have your concentration really high. That's how I did it. So that's why verbal was the toughest section to prepare for, because quant was, see, we're Indians, right? We're good at math,
Yeah,
so quant was manageable. We know what to expect. So I think verbal was the most difficult.
right. Well, English can be a tricky language for most of us, and
Yeah.
yeah. So since you've given the GRE and you're preparing for masters abroad now, how soon should one start preparing for studying abroad? And would you suggest someone to actually do their post graduation abroad?
Yeah. How soon? See, if you're in first year and you know that you're going to do a master's, that's the best case scenario, because if you know so soon that you're going to do a master's, you have the time and resources to create connections, like maybe relationships with professors, so that you can get good LORs, good letters of recommendations,
Mm.
right? You have that kind of time with you. Otherwise, even if you realize that you are going for a master's in the third year, that's even fine, because then you can still go for a job, get some work experience, and then go for a master's. So first year, second year, third year, that's fine. But if you go for a master's in, say, the fourth year, then you'll have to take the GRE, and then you have to wait for the next admission cycle. So that might be some waste of time for you after you graduate. So I would say first to third year, it's totally fine. And as for suggesting someone to go for a master's abroad, yeah, it's totally up to you, I guess, because why I'm doing it, it's because I don't see that my profiles are being I mean, my the kind of profile that I want to go for, it's not out there as much in our scenario, in our country, or maybe in our college. So that's why I thought I should try for other universities, and which are not in India, which are abroad, which have more kinds of profiles in say a machine learning engineer or in a data scientist profile. So I think that's why I'm going for abroad, for masters abroad. And also I would suggest to you, or suggest to anyone who's going for masters, that they should not see, it feels more safer. I mean, I thought that I was taking a risk when I was going for masters, because everyone is going for placements. I know all my friends have gotten placed, and it feels risky, right, to not go for a placement. But I guess I just want to say that you don't have to get bogged down by what the majority is doing, because in the end, when you're placed, when you have a job, you have a lot of people who are like you, and it is easy to replace you. And we all know that if you're easy to replace, then you'll get paid less, right? So I think it's totally worth it to go for what you want to go for. If that makes you unique, that's even better. So yeah, that's what I would say.
That totally makes sense. And well, props to you for having the courage to actually not sit in the placements while all your friends were getting placed. And with that, I'll hand over the stage to Ankit.
Okay, so hi Harshvardhan. Now we'll be moving on to some miscellaneous questions.
Okay.
So as we know, apart from the hard work you put in for GRE and all of that, you've done a lot more stuff in your life. So you have served as an external expert panel member for reviewing grant proposals at NCN Poland twice now, in September 2020 and September 2021. So can you elaborate a bit about it and also shed some light on the selection process?
Right. Hi, by the way. Hi, Ankit. So about the NCN Poland thing. See, you might have heard about government projects, right? What government projects are basically, I mean, in research, it's like when professors are working on something, and they want funding, they need some resources, and they think that it's for a good cause. They reach out to the government or some government agency that provides the grants for such things, and they have to apply for it by giving them a proposal, saying that okay, this is the kind of work that we're going to do. These are the things that we want to achieve. So we want this much of money for these resources. So for that, the government agency, what they do is, they would send out the proposal to people in the field that can judge the quality of the proposal, right? So that's what NCN did. They reached out to me. There was no selection process. I'm not sure what basis they selected me. Maybe it was one of my papers in generative modeling, because that is a topic that the topic of the proposal was. I mean, that was the topic of the proposal. Okay. So that was in September 2020. They reached out to me. They sent me a proposal, and I had to review the work that is going to be done, and if that work was worthy enough to receive a grant proposal. So it was like a 50-page document or something. um, and then I received it again in the, I mean, another proposal in September 21, which was in computer vision. I mean, I think my other research in computer vision might have influenced that. So yeah, I think that's what I was supposed to do as a external expert review panel member. um, and after that, I mean, it's more contract based. It was not full time or even part time. It was more contract based, I think. And that's the work that I did, and I really enjoyed it, because I knew that as an undergraduate I was, affecting real life things. I mean, I mean, I cannot disclose a lot about the proposals, because allowed that's not allowed, I guess. But it was a lot of money, right? So I thought, okay, I have the power to do this. I have the power to deny someone this huge sum of money, or power to grant someone this sum of money. So it was really great.
Okay, so of course, like someone as talented as you has to be
Ah,
the
no.
I
I'm
suppose.
not. I mean, you guys are more talented, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Okay, so moving on to the next question. So since you're very familiar with the tech world and you've been in constant touch with it, what do you think the trends 4 to 5 years from now are going to be? And what coding languages are going to flourish? And what ideas would you give to our young minds so that they can work towards their path and set their goals right? And that'd be more helpful. And we'd also want to know about your research papers.
Okay, I think you got cut in the start of the question. I mean, I got the rest of it, but what was the first the first sentence,
Yeah,
first
so
question?
I'll just repeat it again.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So I asked, since you are very familiar with the tech world, and you've been in constant touch with the tech world, so what do you think the trends 4 to 5 years from now are gonna be,
Yeah, yeah,
and
right.
what coding languages are gonna flourish?
Okay, okay, got it, got it. Yeah. See, I don't see myself as the right party to predict properly what's going to be the trend in 4 to 5 years. I mean, maybe you should ask Sundar Pichai or someone. But what I've been seeing so far is that we are trying to constantly make the things around us, the machines, the devices around us smarter, right? We want them to understand human language or human perception or whatever. We try to automate the things so that we don't have to tell them what to do, tell the devices what to do. They can figure it out themselves, and it can be in the name of Internet of Things. So maybe if you have a bulb, you're trying to operate it using your mobile phone. You want it to be smart, you want it to be automated, and it's a simple thing like a bulb, I mean, or an LED light. So we are constantly trying to make things smarter, and I think that's the way forward. It's pretty evident that we are going to do the same thing for the next 4 or 5 years, maybe 10, 50, 10 to 20 years. So maybe in the technologies in this domain, in making things smarter, they would flourish. And whatever coding languages there are, see today, for machine learning, which is a main part of artificial intelligence, you use Python, and obviously it's flourishing, right? You use MATLAB, you use for data science, you use R, right? So these are the languages that I know are going to be really good. Maybe there's going to be another language, maybe something like Julia or Ruby. Maybe they will replace one of the languages today. I don't really think it's important to predict which language is going to flourish, because they're just a tool. I mean, between what we want to achieve, between us and what we want to achieve, it's just a tool. We can replace that language to achieve the same thing, right? So it doesn't really matter. As and when a language emerges, you can totally, if you are already a programmer, you can easily switch over to that language. It's not really a big deal. um, and for young minds, I already said that they should really follow their passion. I mean, not get influenced by what the majority is doing, by peer pressure. Don't get influenced at all. Because I know it feels safer to do that, but you'll be in a better place eventually. So I guess that's what I would like to tell people who are just entering the technology field or whatever field. I don't know. I mean, I think this principle applies to everywhere. Um, and as for my research papers, see, I started doing research towards the end of second year, like I said. Um, so my main areas of research are in generative modeling, computer vision, like I said, in machine learning, and mainly my papers deal with recommender systems, topic modeling, machine learning for healthcare. So you want to, I mean, apply machine learning in, say, pneumonia detection or diabetes prediction, stuff like that. And usually image classification problems. I mean, I really like computer vision, but I guess my favorite is generative modeling, but I'm not an expert in that, right? I'm an expert in computer vision, but not in generative modeling. I would like to be an expert in generative modeling. But these are some areas that are really interesting to me. And quite recently, I think in the towards the start of 2022, which is in January itself, we worked on a new way to evaluate generative models. So what they do is they generate data, like artificial data that you haven't seen before, right? So we made a new score, an evaluation metric, which would evaluate the performance of different types of generative models, and based on what they're generating. And they would the metric would just rank these different generative models on based on many parameters. So the parameters, see, there are many metrics in the literature that have been proposed before, but all of them have their shortcomings, and they have their strong points as well. So we try to incorporate all the strong points and eliminate all the shortcomings in the new metric. And this is what we did in the final year project as well, in our fourth year final year project. So that's the most recent thing I think in my research, and I would like to do more in generative modeling itself in the future.
I hope you have more research papers in the future. You please continue to do this work alongside. So
Yeah, thanks.
yeah. One more question for you, Harshvardhan.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about LORs in one of your answers. So can you tell us a bit about that, like elaborated, and how did you approach the professors and all of that?
Okay. So my three main professors, they were from my research. I mean, the first paper that I did, all of them were co-authors with me, and consequently, all the projects that I did later on, it was with them by guidance, by from their guidance. I did that, and I think that's why I use them. I mean, I use them for my LORs. I should not say use. I should say I approach them for my LORs, and that's what anyone does. I mean, it's really simple. You have to work with a professor, or see, it's not mandatory. You can score well in a class, you can score well in your subject, and have that professor recommend you for a university. But what universities want is not only that the student has done good in your subject, but he or she should have worked with you in a project or two, so that really strengthens your case. So try to do some projects with the professors that you want to work with, and then approach them, because they will be at a really good place to recommend you. Then they have a strong reason to recommend you. You cannot just go to any random professor and ask them for a recommendation just because they know you want a favor from them, right? Yeah, it's a give and take relationship. You have to give them something, you have to work with them, then only they'll recommend you. So I think that's the best way to do it.
Exactly, and like working along the professors also lets them know about your true talent, so that they can
Yeah,
actually
they
recommend
can
you.
be honest about it. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that'll be it for now. Thank you so much, Harshvardhan, for joining us today. I'm
Thank you
sure
too.
this,
Thank you too. Thanks for the opportunity. I mean, it's been great.
yeah, we love to have you here today. Yeah. I'm sure this fun and informative session will be very helpful to all our viewers. We'll be wrapping it up here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. And just wrap it up. You can, if anyone's watching this, you can contact Kit Kaksha if you don't know how to contact me, and they can reach back to me if you have any questions about taking the GRE or anything about masters, right? So you can do that.